Hello, live here on Good Friday. I know it's a holiday for many people, but for many of you who I think started the what we call the Easter groove, even though this is the day you're supposed to be celebrating your Savior, but sure, that's your celebration style. We hope you're having fun. We know that our people, we know that Chakola United was hitting the streets yesterday. Uh, it would be interesting if they did. What would be interesting if they did Vernon Easter the same way we did the first National Day of Prayer, where we ban all bars from operating from the night
Yeah,
before going all the way
that
in.
that'll be great.
That one was a that was a hard one. You'll see how much of a holiday it is when you ban bars from operating during this period. No, go and worship people. This is Easter. It's not for you to go
People
and
will be
chakola
upset.
yourself. No, but anyway, Brendan, thank you very much. How are you doing, my brother? Hello.
Extremely handsome. I don't know how you're doing this Easter.
Well, I would say I'm a bit sharp myself. I'm spiffy, my brother. I'm spiffy. Now, today we're going to be talking about resistance to change. It being Futuristic Friday, we have been talking about the topic of change. Next week we'll be dealing with the third part of the growth mindset. Remember, we've been dealing with the learning part of the growth mindset. Now we're dealing with the change part of the growth mindset. Now we're dealing with the third part next week, which is going to be learning from failure. Then after that, resilience, and then finally strategizing. Those are the five pillars of a growth mindset: learning, embracing change, learning from failure, being resilient, and strategizing. Those are the five components. We're going to be going through them all the way through for the next 3 weeks. We've got them through, but it's a 5 week section. So good morning to everyone for joining us. But today we're going to be going through the markets, a few deep dives today, things that are quite important to the market. And then we're going to be going into the topic of resistance to change and how to combat it at a personal level, because usually that is what creates a problem with people's growth story. But kick it off, Vernon. Let's get down to this handsome fella who's going to take you through the Futuristic Friday outlook. In the market roundup, first thing that we've seen is that we've seen that the kwacha has actually continued strengthening all the way up to 19.776. So on the month now, it's even down. So you can see that over the last 30 days, it has now shrunk down. So the kwacha is actually in an appreciation cycle of 1.86% on the month, and it's down 1.11% from yesterday as well. Year to date, dollars have finally dropped below 10%. So you can see how much this kwacha rally has done. It's a mega rally that broke off a 122-day rally of the dollar. Now, my concern is this sustainable? There are some changes in the market that we might think of, but remember, it is tax season. This could just be the tax season playing strong, but then there's another factor of it that actually might come into it, so we're not too sure. But we've also seen the rand also losing value, down 3.3% yesterday and down 10.26% just on the week. So this has been a very, very, very very strong week for the kwacha, stronger than we've seen for many years. This, I think, we haven't seen a kwacha rally this strong since, I think, President Chilema walked in, and there was that huge optimism that came in. And before that, when the central banks have intervened with very harsh cuts and very strong squeezes. This is what you expected from the central bank when they said that they're going to start pulling back the when they said that they're going to start implementing the squeeze on reserve ratios. This is the kind of results we expected, like what we saw in November 2020 and November 2019. But unfortunately, we continue down this route. But hopefully, this can persist. Now, one of the things I want us to also look at is what is the trajectory of the kwacha looking like? So before 5 days ago, I think what we saw, this was the trajectory we were looking at, where in August, we're looking down the barrel of a kwacha that was looking at 28. Now the trajectory is starting to flatten. We're looking at a kwacha that's potentially looking at around 25. Okay, and if we continue down this, we might get this trajectory absolutely flat to the point where we might have a stable kwacha. But for now, we still have some buying pressure, some buying buildup that can push the kwacha a little bit further, and we are seeing a slowdown in the rally itself. But the good news is that blue line there shows you the trajectory from 5 days ago. The green line is showing you the current trajectory of the currency, and it is showing you that we are starting to flatten. And that's some good news to look out for us as a country. Now, And looking at the bond index, we did see that bonds yesterday did trade about 994.08, and that was up 0.7%. But we did see in dollars they were also up 1.1. Now on the month, bonds are in US dollars are up 2.56% versus 0.25% domestically, up 5.77% year to date, but still down year to date in dollars. And interest rates did also decline again by a few basis points, about 29 basis points yesterday. And that has pushed us now to about 1.5, only 1.15% upwards through the year. Now you can see there's been a step ladder that has pushed interest rates up during the year. So we are seeing that there's still a significant bond sell-off, and we're still in the throes of trying to deal with a debt crisis. Commodity markets, we did see that copper did move up by 0.14%, while oil did pull back down a little bit yesterday, with gold still trading above the 2,000 mark at very high levels. Year to date, we have seen that copper is up 4.97%, with oil down 1.13% year to date, but gold is up 11.06%, showing that we're in an economically tender position. That's what we're seeing. But when we're looking at our wealth insurance assets, remember what I always say with these are only to take up about 15% of your portfolio, and they're there to just offset broad market downturns. Cryptocurrency down 1.5% in terms of Bitcoin, 2.8% in terms of Ethereum, and gold in Kwacha down 1.15%. Now, simultaneously, one of the things that we are trying to pay attention to here is that this is all driven by the strengthening of the kwacha. So you're actually seeing that fundamentally gold has actually done okay. Fundamentally, Bitcoin has actually done okay. It's just that unfortunately you're also dealing with the strengthening of the kwacha, which is then losing you that part of your portfolio. But then you should see that reflecting in the dollar market itself. You should see it reflecting, in the stock market and the bond market itself. Now, going into things like the end of the year to date changes. Sorry, we keep forgetting to move that date up. What we're also seeing is that we're seeing that year to date, and this is meant to read the 7th of April. Year to date, we are seeing that bonds are up 5.8%, stocks are up 8%. You can see that stocks are now catching up to dollars. And we're seeing that gold is still trading at about 21.4% year to date, mainly because of the US dollar trading of gold itself. And we're seeing that Bitcoin is up 83.9% year to date, but it is shaving off from that 94 that it had, and 70.1% is the way Ethereum has traded year to date. Going further into the market now, we are getting ready for our deep dive. So our market's actually showing us that everything is starting to level off because the kwacha is starting to get stronger, and it's the dictating factor of all of this. But let's touch into the deep dive. First deep dive I want to touch on to Vernon is how the bond auction did last week. So we have given you the summary data here. Interest rates did not move across the board, but we did see that the composite rate did move upwards, mainly because of trading of the 10-year. There was 10-year and the 15-year, which have higher interest rates. So the composite yield was now sitting at 23.3%. Now, what we see in terms of the summary data is that a lot more of the bond market did trade negatively in terms of sales data. We did see a 5% decline in sales for the 3-year, and a 46% decline in sales for the for the 3-year, 5% decline for the 2-year, and then 46% decline for the 3-year. And we saw upward movements in terms of sales for the 5-year, 81% upwards, and we saw upward movements for the 7-year and the other bonds that were also on sale. Main big mover was the 15-year, which moved up 233%, up to 168 million, mainly because of renewals in the market. Remember that they're those that came into maturity and they were just reinvested. So you do get those long ones that come in and then they get pushed back into the market. In terms of composition, sales against performance, we've seen that 81% performance of the 2-year bond, but everything performed really, giving a 29% performance, except for the 15-year bond, which performed at 42%. And if you're looking at composition, a lot of the composition was sitting between the 15-year bond and the 3-year bond, which made up 54% of the total auction itself. So you did see that the long end came down about 15%, 19% in terms of composition. And you did see that the tail end did perform a little bit better. So long-term bonds actually did a bit better in that last auction. Now, if you take a look at your auction sales again, you see that there was a decline across many of them in terms of the spectrum, with the sharpest decline happening in the 3-year bond, which moved from 191 to 103 million kwacha worth of sales. But you did see the highest spike was the 15-year, which moved from 50 to 168, and also the 10-year moved from 92 to 128. So you did see sharp movements up and also the 5-year, which did quite a strong, sharp movement up as well. If you're looking at sales against performance, the same thing that we're looking at from the previous slide. Now, bond auction composite sales also now shows you again that the big composition from the last time, where the main composition was the first three bonds, the 2-year, 3-year, and the 5-year. The strong composition this time was the 3-year, was the 2-year, the 15-year, and the 10-year. Those are the top three composites of the actual bonds itself, and that's where we got about 70% of the auction was sitting from those three. From those three alone. In fact, it was more than 70, just above 73, just above 70%. So we're actually looking at somewhere around 71% of the auction is just those three tenors themselves. And that was a bit of a change, but like I said, it was mainly due to maturities and rollovers that came into strike. Now, if you're looking at the long-term performance of the bond market, what we have seen is that last week was one of the weakest, but if it wasn't, the previous week was the weakest in many years. So it was a little bit of a movement upwards. But you did see that the short end, in other words, the short part of the curve, did perform at one of the worst that we've actually seen for a while. And now we actually have seen the long part. That's the part that did revive at about 18% from 11%. So I think that's what saved the auction more than anything. It wasn't the old. It wasn't the new bonds. It was it wasn't the short-term bonds. It was the long-term bonds that actually did most of the work. And therefore, we're seeing interest rates did spike up mainly because of long-term bonds themselves. They were the key drivers of the auction data. And then year to date, we are seeing, and this is year to date data that we're seeing here, that's showing that the 2-year bonds year to date that have been issued up 9% from where we were last year, with 25% issuance, 25% improvement from where we were last year in terms of this, 25% decline in terms of 3-year bonds, 73% in terms of 5-year bonds, and the 10-year bonds are also up. Also year to date a little bit, mainly because of what happened at the beginning of the year and what we're seeing now. Year-to-date sales performance that we're also seeing versus against target. The 10-year is the one that's outperformed. 10-year, 15-year, and the 2-year, the ones that have outperformed this year. So this is just a bit of your year-to-date summary of how your bond market is doing. But the biggest news that's coming up here from yesterday is actually came from our Minister of Finance, Dr. Busokotwani, who has said that unfinished debt rework is punishing Zambia. That's what he had said. And he said it's not the fault of the Zambian people, but it is the two main creditors, China and the international bondholders. The IMF payout of 188 million kwacha to Zambia is now contingent on its bilateral creditors reaching an agreement on the long-delayed bond restructuring. The IMF, however, did praise the Zambian government for hitting all of its targets and its policy commitments, noting lower than expected tax collections, but that was offset by higher taxes in other areas. So this has actually become a relatively difficult spot for the Zambian government, but they actually managed to do it. However, taking a look at some of the outlooks, the outlines of all of this, the IMF does see that over the next 5 years, the growth outlook for the world is actually going to be the worst that they've seen in 30 years. The global GDP is set to only grow at about 3% for the next 5 years on average, and this is the worst since the 1990s. And these are twin threats of deglobalization and geopolitical instability. Now, what they're pretty much looking at is one, the war in Ukraine, Russia. The Ukraine and Russia war obviously is destabilizing and causing demand destruction, but deglobalization, in other words, the entrenched supply chains that have been built between many of the parts of the world are starting to resort to becoming more regional. China trading with Russia and Japan, while you're seeing trading happening with South American countries, while you're seeing trading happening with North American countries, it appears President Trump preempted the fracturing of the global system. And mainly, he was either the cause of it or he could see it happening. But we are now moving to a regionalized global economy where everybody is trading in their own pockets and trading with their neighbors, except Africans who need to get on with the program. But these are the twin threats that are now going to slow down that. And also, central banks are going to be less nimble. 90% of the developed economies are likely to experience slower growth in 2023 going onwards than they experienced in 2022, which was already a relatively bad year for economic growth. However, recent signs have also created a call to global regulators who now have to be vigilant and agile with a lot of the bank failures that she did cite. And she did actually give thanks to a lot of the central banks who had stepped in, especially Switzerland and the USA, to try and help support the banking system from going through a global collapse. This is the IMF chair, the IMF president, Kristalina Georgieva, sorry about that, who had actually pointed this out. Other news that's coming out is China also plans to unleash its new super regulator, the National Financial Regulation Authority. Beijing wants to ease its dependency on investor-driven growth, and they want to try and create some centralization of regulation authority over the financial markets in China by establishing the super regulator, which is the National Financial Regulation Administration, and aimed at reining in leverage, highly indebted borrowers, rising non-performing loans at banks, property debt, and local government deficits. Now, this is actually quite important because this also affects China's ability to start lending around the world, and also the fact that its Belt and Road portfolio is majority now in deficit, and they're trying to fix that. Is in debt and default, and they're trying to fix that. So China basically pulling back. So I'm just looking at this whole IMF situation we're facing, where global growth is slowing down. China is trying to now regulate its financial sector and avoid debt combustion happening here. And at the same time, this now brings into perspective the visit that our president faced from VP Harris last week, which underscores the foreign relationship tightrope walk that our country has to start going through. China is basically recalculating its nature of its engagement with Zambia. That is true. And our President Hichilema has taken an assertive stance, has taken an assertive approach to international relations while maintaining positive neutrality. That is the stance that is looking at. And African leaders don't share much of this polarized view. That is correct. African leaders do take a different approach to the Chimerica rift. It's not about taking one or two. It's what President Manu Gwagwa said when he actually said, "We are enemies of none and friends to all." And that is the stance that most countries have to take. And that is the stance that even our president officially did state in that press briefing. But it does underscore how difficult the situation is. So, other piece of news. So that is actually bringing up together that the debt situation now, trying to get this together, might be explained why the IMF has had to now step in and say, look, either you people sort this out, or we are going to have to just withhold payments to Zambia so that you can get you to sort it out. Because it seems you're very comfortable with the fact that we're sending money to Zambia when you're supposed to be sorting out the debt. That's what this G20 common framework was about. Now, other piece of news in our deep dive for today has got to do with change in the digital space. And Zambian National Data Center to be set up to help support cloud technology. And Liquid is actually the main one that has signed an MOU with the GRZ to help establish a national data center. Now, this will actually help because we use a lot of cloud-based services as people, whether it's cloud accounting services or cloud business services, any cloud services are being hosted outside, things like Amazon Web Service or whatever it is. We're hosting things outside the country. So this is actually helping us now internalize a lot of our data, because data is going to be king going forward. Data is actually going to be one of the single most important things going forward. Now, this should actually help speed up digital transformation because cloud services also help small businesses start to access professional systems. Because what happened for a longest period of time is that small businesses could not access proper accounting. They could not access proper customer relationship management systems because those are mainly meant for big businesses who can install them using their own servers and their own data. Now, when you've got hosted data services, you can actually now host a lot of that information outside. So here's a step I wish and I'm hoping that our government could take. That starting from a point a person registers a business, we should have access to good accounting systems and good customer relationship management systems, which are held domestically. That'll actually help a lot of people run their businesses correctly from the beginning, as opposed to trying to keep up with the system much later. So I am hoping that the moment you sign up for your PACRA account, for example, a lot of this can also now help you open up cloud-based account system or cloud-based business systems so that you can start running your business decently from the beginning, especially sales systems and money management systems. Just those two at the beginning would really preserve a lot of businesses and do a lot of good for them. Sales systems and money management systems, as we have local systems that can actually do some of those things already. And that's going forward into our deep dives. So first thing, as I pointed out, is the IMF battle is a little bit difficult. One, because we're seeing that they're holding back about 180 million of that next payment. Yes, they've approved it, but they're holding back the deployment of that money mainly until they're sure that they will have access, until they're sure we can have a debt resolution. So that's the main one, and that's a big one. Some may call that blackmail, some may call that whatever, but that's an actual big piece of news. And that's why our Minister of Finance was actually saying we're being punished for our main creditors not being able to come to an agreement. And obviously, digital transformation is coming alive now that we'll be talking about a national data center, and hopefully we'll be able to host a lot of our services and our business activity here. People can be able to now start having digital storefronts and being able to operate quite well going into the future. Now, touching into our chart of the day, and our chart of the day today is got to do with media change and how the digital economy has affected the media industry. So the first part of our chart of the day shows media change in the US, and you can see that pink line there is advertising expenditures that have been going on in media publications, print media publications, and you can see that circulation numbers were also picking up in terms of money from circulation. In other words, people paying for their circulation. You'll notice that revenue declines from the advertising when that yellow line picks up. That is Facebook and YouTube coming into light. So that's a huge change that happened in society. So let's see how that affects even Zambia. As you can see, print, in terms of the sources of daily news for the average Zambian, this is Afrobarometer, that shows that the newspaper, which used to be the most dominant form of news in this country, is now down to 5%. It was the second most dominant, is now down to only 5% of adults, with 25% of adults, 22 now resorting to internet search, 24 using social media, television 34%, and radio 37. What's interesting to me in all of this is that how close social media is coming to radio and television. And it looks like we are going to be transitioning to a social media news-driven nation quite soon. Because remember, social media did not exist in Zambia that much until about 2015, because 2012, 2011, not that many people were utilizing Facebook. Now, this is also a survey that was done recently about about use of media channels. And you can see radio is used by about 38%, 34% utilize TV. Internet is now as high as 14%. This was a 2019 survey, and 2% only utilize the newspaper. So you can see that the newspaper and print media are taking a huge beating right now in terms of their position in society. It does take a beating in terms of our position in society. The other part that you can see, which is an interesting part of this, which is also adding to this change mindset, comes from which channels people are comfortable utilizing. If you take a look at this quite carefully, the average Zambian is more comfortable, especially the younger they are, seem more comfortable utilizing the internet, and less that happens, the older people are getting, and they become more comfortable. And obviously, the newspaper becomes more positive. You've got 10-year-olds to 15-year-olds, which we're not sure about, but from 16, you're seeing a very low usage. But then when you get higher and higher, like 65 years plus, you get about 4.5% usage. And the older generations are used to getting their news or getting their information from the radio, while the younger generation are used to visual and online. So this is actually quite important if you want to start basing what you want, who you want to target in your audience. Visual and online speaks very strongly to the younger parts of society, while audio and paper speaks very strong to the older parts of society. That is our chart of the day. And thank you to everyone who's joining us in Lakeisha PVT School. Let me just share what you have stated today, and good morning to you today. And what we have today is we've seen that Good Morning Munyumba and the whole Green Industrial Machine team continue leading to inspire. Money FM is my hero in practical financial literacy, and we are thankful for you being here with us today. Today's topic of discussion to everyone, it being Good Friday, today I want to talk about resistance to change. And this is quite important because we've been talking about change versus the fixed mindset, the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And what you have to look at is a growth mindset is able to embrace change. And that is a key critical component of today's conversation, the ability to embrace change. So I'm going to start with a quote by this handsome young man here. Um, by this handsome young man here who said about a year ago, in a world where waves of change are coming in thicker and faster, we the people need to shift our main leadership selection criteria from crisis and situation management to change management. We don't need people who are going to just get us through something. We need people who are going to get us to something. Yes, I'm using preacher speak there. So, Vernon, what say you on this new paradigm of whether we want crisis leadership or change leadership?
I, for one, I'm more of change oriented. Um, Change for me entails that you know basically life itself is actually us adapting to change in itself. Today you wake up, it's a different weather, you're able to adapt to it and you keep living. Tomorrow you have a different inflation rate, but we still keep striving. Tomorrow we have a different story in agriculture that milling meal is available and you still buy milling meal at a very high cost. It's all change, but the direction of change, I think that's what probably would be the area of concern. And this is where people who bring about change, I'm not sure if you're familiar with a series called Billions. I have watched that one a couple of times, and something I really like about that lead role character, Bobby Axelrod,
Acts.
is
Yeah.
how basically he would have all of these things come at him and be able to control and predict what happens in the future and still remain in a position that he's able to win and make profits at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? So for him, he saw himself as a game changer. He is what made a difference and actually brought change in that very industry of the financial sector. Even the authorities actually could feel his presence whenever he's in a meeting, for example. So I feel has to be driven change has to be driven and adapting to change. I'm not sure if I'm really for the idea of adapting to any kind of change, but I want to drive and orchestrate what kind of change I want to be around.
So today, just now you've said something important. So today, one of the biggest things that we're going to try and battle here is the resistance to growth, and which generally is the resistance to change. Okay, and how why people resist change, how they resist change. And I'm going to use a Harvard professor's a name is Cantor, Rosabeth Moss Cantor, professor of Harvard Business School, and she's written over 20 books of innovation, strategy, and dealing with change. So she's actually dealt with this. Now, she has said resistance to change manifests itself in many ways, from foot dragging, inertia, to petty sabotage and outright rebellion. The best tools for leaders to change is to understand the predictable, universal sources of resistance at each situation, then strategize around them. Here are 10 that I found the most common. Now, what I've taken from this also is how we can also implement this at a personal level. So I'm going to be bouncing between dealing with this, Vernon, at an institutional level, but also dealing with this issue of resistance to change at a personal level. Okay, so that's very important part because I want you to look at also how you as a person are resisting change in certain areas. So let's say you want to start improving your finances. Well, Vernon, the question is, can you improve your finances without changing your financial habits? You see, can you improve your health without changing your health habits? You can't say, I want to lose weight and I want to get into shape and everything, but you're eating the same, doing the same thing, waking up the same times, not working out. You can't do that. As in, trust me, I've tried. We tried praying away the weight before. It doesn't work. It doesn't. You actually have to get up and do something. That's the difference.
Exactly.
Uh, what what we do have to start saying is that every improvement requires a change because an improvement is a recognition something's wrong right now and therefore it needs to be improved. But then it requires changing the process that gets to it. So there's a process. Every result in your life, let me put it to you this way, every current result in your life has to do with processes going on in your life. So whatever finances you have has is a direct reflection of the processes at work and that have been at work for a while. Whatever health you are, it has to do with the processes that are at work, your eating and workout process. Whatever work you're in has to do with the processes that have been going on in the last 5 years and are still going on right now. You are a reflection of the processes at work. So if you want to make a change, or if you want an improvement, it requires switching processes, changing things. So all growth and development is hinged on change. Now, there are two things, Vernon, at work. One is that growth requires change. Two is
Yeah.
that we are no longer in a static environment. So you are in a changing environment with the need to change. So there's this double change that has to go on. There's your personal change, and there's adapting to environmental change at the same time and making sure you're not at the victim of the negative consequences of it. So, really, change management has gone from being something talked about on the fringes to something that is of utmost importance. Businesses are built on change management, activities happen on change management. Everything has to do with change management now because everything is changing. Whether it's let me put it to you this way, Vernon. Whether it's running a business and you want to grow your business, but the majority of customers have switched from withdrawing money from ATMs to now transacting using mobile money. Can you then grow your business without having mobile money recipient methods of trying to transact with your customers? It's impossible, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So for you to be able to meet the goals you need to, you have to change, you have to adapt and lead the environment you're in. So whatever growth you're looking for, whether it's spiritual, physical, anything, whatever growth you're looking for requires good change management. Okay. So that's why I'm looking at Rosabeth Cantermoss is a 20, 30-year professional who has written books such as When Giants Lead, Thinking Outside the Building, trying to manage change and help organizations change. And she is a Harvard professor who has been one of the utmost thinkers in this area. And today I'm going to talk about 10 battles of resistance to change, how you can, what is it? Okay, what is the resistance point? What are the ramifications of that resistance point? And what is the potential remedy of that resistance point? Okay, so that's the way we're going to look at it. And then we're going to talk about six important principles to enacting positive change, whether in your life or in an organization. Okay, but change is an important thing. So, first thing is you cannot run away from it. You must embrace change. That's what this whole week has been about. We've been talking about embracing change. Okay, in fact, the very essence of this weekend, the day of our Savior, was He came to change things as well. Okay, he didn't come to get rid of the law. He came to add to it. He came to add the Holy Spirit. He changed a lot of things. So change is important. So I want to really factor that in. So now let's go back to this concept, Vernon, of how do people resist change? And you'll see five things people tend to do. They have a lack of participation in the actions of change. They openly express negative emotions against change. They are absent from being in change. They revert to their old ways or they decrease in productivity. I said this today, Vernon, and I know some people will fight me on this because I know that manual drivers are something else. But I've said the most resistant to change people in society today are one, people who drive manual cars. Those people are resistant. They are resistant. But a person who does all four of these things, one,
Mhm.
people who drive manual cars. Two, people who write checks, people who have checkbooks. Three, people who read physical newspapers. And four, people who still vote for UNIP. Honestly, guys, when elections are going on, who's still voting for UNIP, guys? Who- who's holding on to those days so strong that they're not? Now, I'm imagining a
So very
person, Vernon,
hopeful.
who does all four. Who does
Yeah.
all four? Drives a manual, reads a physical newspaper, writes it, pays with a check, and votes for UNIP at elections. Those are the people who are resistant to change. But yes, resistance to change. And as you can see, these manual car drivers are coming here again. Yes, yes, to the manual squad. I get it. I'm not a car enthusiast. You people are just resist. You know that manual cars are only like 2% of cars these days. Manual cars are
Yes.
now only like two.
Mhm.
Like even Ferrari has discontinued manual cars, but these people are bent on driving manual cars. Like even the producers of manual cars have stopped making them. So I'm trying to figure out
Yeah.
why these people are holding on to this dream. Like manual cars are gonna end up in a museum very soon. Anyway, let me stop ragging on manual cars. Let me stop ragging on them. So Manda Joel, don't worry, we'll leave the manual cars alone. But anyway, so let's get back to resistance to change, as exactly they've shown themselves. Now, there are 10 battles today, Vernon, that we're going to be dealing with. 10 battles of resistance to change today. And the first one is fear of loss of control. People are afraid of change because they fear losing control of situations. So their personal choice and determination and autonomy feels threatened. So people they start to judge the change by how it'll hurt them. Okay? And the most important thing, Vernon, to anyone, number one, most important thing is freedom and autonomy. See, everybody, all the money you make right now, you see, they're coming, they arrive, they're
Mm.
showing up.
By one.
All the money you're making, all the money you're making in life is simply because, Vernon, you want to be free from things. The money you make is because you want to be free from worrying about your needs. You want to be free from worrying about your loved ones. You want to be free from worrying about your security. The money you save and invest is because you want to be free from your employer. Okay? So money you save gives you freedom from your employer. Money you make gives you freedom from worry. It gives you freedom from the environment. So money is all about freedom. That's all it is. That's what people need to understand. Money is just about freedom. If you look at it that way, you understand that the most important thing is your freedom. And that's why people resist change a lot, because they need freedom. They want freedom. Okay. And the moment change starts to threaten their freedom, okay, threaten their ability to choose, the moment changes affect a person's ability to choose what life they want, what department they can work with, what hours they can come to, you make a change at the workplace that now affects a person's abilities to choose the way they can work, and now they have to work by a certain script. They start resisting that. So they start to look at, okay, how is this going to impact my freedom? That's the first thing you're going to get. And so, in order, what you want to try and do in order to remedy this is make sure that you make change a choice. So, if I'm sitting down with somebody and I'm doing their financial outlook, and I say, okay, look, in order for you to get to the goal that you're looking for, you're going to have to make these changes in your life. So that person is now looking and saying, oh, so I don't have the freedom to spend money like I used to. I don't have freedom to go to concerts like I used to. I don't have the. So there's a lot of worry that it's all of a sudden going to constrict their life. Saving becomes a very strong constriction on their life. So what you want to try and do is, one, make change a choice. So what I like to do, Vernon, whenever I sit down with the client, is I give them an array of options. Well, this is option one to get to your goal. This is option two. This is option three. Okay. So you can, if you want to do it in 10 years, somebody will tell me, well, I want to retire in 10 years. So I'll tell them, this is how much you have to do if you want to do it in 10 years. This is how much it will work if you want to do it in 20 years. So if you want to retire in 20 years or 30 years, these are your options. You know what I often find is that when you present it as a choice, at least the person feels comfortable with the fact that they are the ones who got to choose and the choice was not imposed on them.
Yeah.
Okay. So people just want, even if it's an illusion, just give them a choice. People will not look. Governments don't change people. Let's stop lying to ourselves. The government doesn't change. But the fact that we have an election convinces us that we're happy. Okay?
Yeah.
The fact that we have an election convinces us that we're happy. Okay? So even if the government doesn't change, we're still celebrating that we vote. Right? So the illusion of choice sometimes is even as equally as important as the freedom someone has. But then also invite them into the planning session and make them take ownership over the change. So let a person take agency over their change. Let them look at how they can implement it. And then also, now when you're planning the implementation of change, invite them in. I sit down with people who I'm dealing with, and I don't just write them a document and say, here, this is what you have to implement. I sit down with them and I get their views on it, I get their inputs on it, and they feel like they've co-created this change plan as well. And once someone takes ownership of it, now they feel like they have autonomy over the change process. So fear of loss of control is defeated by making change a set of choices giving yourself a set of choices, and then choosing between something. Now, not too many choices that you feel that you've given yourself what we call paralysis of analysis, where you're doing too many things and then you're struggling to make a decision. So don't give yourself too many choices. Give yourself a single choice that you need to make. And that is the first battle of change that you need to go through. The second battle, Vernon, is fear of the unknown. People are nervous about things they don't know. So they resort to what we call better the devil you know mentality. Even if what they're currently doing is harming them, better the devil you know. Okay. We've seen this in elections, we've seen this in business, we've seen this with technology. Better the devil. I've seen this with when people are having problems with their bank, for example, and they want to change which bank they're using, you'll find that they'll say, I would change banks. And I've heard this, I would change banks, but I'll probably find the same issues at that bank. And they don't want to have to go through a process of change only to find that it's either could be worse. People stay in marriages because of better the devil you know mentality. Yes,
Yeah.
he's like this to me, and yes, she's like this to me, but you know what? What's out there could be worse. So I'd rather deal with the problems I know than the potential blessings that out there, which could end up being a problem. So how do you get people to deal with the unknown? Well, the first thing you do is you offer them a sense of safety. Okay, you need to be there to walk them through the process, because the unknown is a dark place, Vernon. And at least if they can have familiar voices around them, it might help. You need to give them an inspiring and compelling vision of what could be there in this unknown. Okay, something that really inspires them to go for it. That's actually quite important. Give them a clear process, because they're going into a dark space where they don't know what's there. But if they have clarity in the process with which change is going to occur, then that's important. And simple steps. So whenever you're going into an unknown territory, Vernon, maybe you're going into a new venture like an entrepreneurship. Maybe you've been working and you've been employed your whole life and you're trying to go into entrepreneurship. You're going to need somebody who's an entrepreneur to try and walk you through the process. You're going to need a compelling vision of what this journey is going to be like. You're going to need clear processes of what you're going to be following. And you're going to need to simplify this into steps and timetables to be able to execute it. If you don't do that, that unknown, you'll look at your job, and if you have to be there, and I know people don't like this conversation, some people need to leave their work, some people need to stay. But for those that need to leave, I'm not talking to those that need to stay. And you're not a person who's entrepreneurial minded. I understand. But if you are a person, this is what you need to go through. You need to pull yourself. Otherwise, you go into better the devil you know mentality and say, I'll stick with where I am now, because better the devil I know than the angel I need to search for. Okay. So that's the second battle of change. On the other side of the break, and remember, people, we are going to be taking a slight break. On the other side of the break, we will be going through what are the other 8 battles of change that you're going to go through, and the ramifications and remedies that you need to look at in implementing the better change of you. Because these are the things you'll go through, whether it's spiritual change, physical change, financial change, whether it's family change, whatever change you're going through, these are the things you need to start dealing with. So on the other side, Vernon, we'll touch on that.
And we are back at it again. Thank you so much for staying glued and just staying on standby as we went for a break there.
So, Vernon, hopefully this is helping you with your own personal resistance to change. And these are things you can also do to yourself. No, Vernon, you're an African man. African, we're
Mhm.
resistant to change. African men, we're resistant. Us, we fight change. We fight change to the bitter
Mhm.
end. So hopefully this will be able to help you on a personal level as well with resistance to change. I'm not accusing Vernon. People, don't worry. Everyone is resistant at some point. Now, the third one. So we went through fear of loss of control and then fear of the unknown. There's also fear of surprise. Okay? And what you find is that change imposed suddenly. That's what people are worried about. They don't they resist things when they're imposed suddenly with no time to get used to them. So it's easier to just say no. So if somebody catches you off guard, Vernon, and asks you for something, you say no. If someone says instantly you have to make this change, you start to resist it. If unless there's a serious like major reason why. So avoid the temptation of crafting changes in secret, whether you're dealing with your spouse for a second, for let's say you want to move. Avoid just waking up one day and saying, honey, we need to just move. No, avoid that problem and trying to spring changes. Let me tell you who's very good at this. And it says plant seeds and sprinkle hints and seek input. Now minus the seek input part, but let me tell you who's very good at this. Wives, when they want to change parts of the house, they don't just like outright change everything in the living room. Just all of a sudden a new pot will pitch up. All of a sudden a new like vase will pitch up. Like just small little things start pitching up and then what they'll also start doing is like when they want to change the couch in the house or the sofa or something, they'll start telling you reasons. Like, honey, I think the sofa's got a little bit of a crack. The conversations start coming in bit by bit. And by the third, fourth time, like, okay, fine, let's just change it. She knew she wanted to change that thing, but she knew that she couldn't just spring that thing on you. Because especially guys, we're very strong creatures of habit. So what ends up happening is there is a way to slowly and surely, slowly sneak the change in. So instead of trying to surprise people with change, slowly incept the change. And the same thing with you. Let's say you're trying to change a diet, for example. Okay. And the problem is that you'll try and just shock your body with a giant diet change. Okay. And you'll often find that your whole body will be resisting this.
Mhm.
Slowly and gradually ease into the diet. Okay. Start doing small hints. Terry Crews talked about this once when he was talking about fitness and going to the gym. He was saying, some of the mistakes people make is like, he said he always looks at these trainers who are busy trying to blast their clients, like give them the worst gym experience and hurt them on the first day. And yeah, you know what he advised people to do? He said, when you go to the gym on the first day, he says, go to the gym. He says, grab a cup of water. He said, touch your weight, have a conversation with the person, and just walk out. He said, if you've never been, just do that. He said, do that for the first week. Then the second week, talk to someone. Get comfortable in that area. Then he said the third week, lift something, just one thing, 5 minutes, then walk out. Just go. Don't even continue. And he says that throughout time, you're going to get more and more comfortable because people become confident and creative when they're comfortable. That's the thing about
Yeah.
us. The aspects we like about ourselves, our confidence and creativity, are often a result of comfort. So I know people like to say, get out of your comfort zone, but the reality is about comfort is that it actually helps you become creative. So if you slowly ease something, and I'm being honest, I figured this out, Vernon. Like I was struggling to use new technology to create things like databases. Okay, and I realized I'm very good with Excel,
Right.
very good with Excel and PowerPoint. I tried to use other software to create images and slides, and I realized that I'm very good with PowerPoint. Like I know how to use PowerPoint so well, I can even do like graphic creations on it. And then I realized that that's because I'm comfortable in there. I've gotten to a point where I feel so confident that I'm comfortable in there. And so I can easily be creative. So creativity, unfortunately, requires a space of comfort. But if you want to expand your confidence and your creativity, you have to face temporary discomfort and then eventually get comfortable with something so that you can be creative. So you can't keep yourself in constant discomfort. Okay, you're going to struggle to be creative. You're going to struggle to be proficient about it. But if you do allow yourself to go through temporary transitions of discomfort, slowly easing yourself into it, you can become more confident and creative. So it's just something that people should start thinking about when it comes about this whole battle of comfort zones. I know you should get out of your comfort zone, but you should make yourself comfortable in an area for some time. But get comfortable with the idea that you need to transition every 2 to 3 years or so. Switch things up every so often, but don't get into this reckless habit of bouncing between places. You'll never build any confidence, and you'll never do that. So it's just something to think about. The next battle of change is fear of loss of status. This is battle number 4. Now, change can shift the importance of certain things, positions, skills, and practices, and people will resist feeling the feeling of suddenly being irrelevant, or worse, looking like you were wrong. That's a one thing. People will
Mm-hmm.
defend themselves from looking wrong. So you mean I was wrong this whole time? What, I was doing the wrong thing. People will persist holding on to things because they don't want to lose face. They don't want to lose status. Okay, they don't want to lose face. So what you should do is, one, celebrate the things you got right in the past. I've seen people like saying that the past generations did not hand over finance and entrepreneurship to us. They did what they could. They did what they knew best. Okay, they did what they knew best. But and one of the mistakes a lot of young people do, like I've seen it with parenting, money, everything, will say everything our parents did, we're going to do the opposite. And that's a mistake too on its own. Okay. So I think what people need to start doing is celebrate what was right about the past, and then remind yourself that not everything has to change, just the important things. And therefore, the old doesn't lose status. Remind the older generations that, you know what, we got this from you. We got work ethic from you.
Mm-hmm.
We got family structure from you. We don't have to abandon everything. We're just improving. Okay? We're just adding a few things. That's why Jesus even said, I did not come to remove the law, I came to add to it. Okay? You see, and that was a statement to comfort people, that those who were there to instill and manage the law, I'm not here to remove you. I'm just here to add to it. Okay? There's certain things that are missing that just need to be added to it, but that's not here to remove it. Don't worry about that. Okay? Now, some of the Pharisees, yes, you do need to be removed. You're wrong. But he actually made a change in some of those areas. The fifth battle of change is what we call fear of discomfort. Change requires adjustment in habits and routines that will often cause discomfort. You want to get fit? Change requires that will require you wake up at 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning. Okay, it's gonna require that. Okay, you want to be highly productive? Well, highly productive people get workouts in, they journal, and they get their minds sharp before 6 a.m. If you're used to waking up at 7, that's a painful adjustment. Vernon, it's a painful adjustment. So change will require discomfort. Now, too many differences can become distracting, confusing, and you can show people having a lack of coordination in executing change. So here's what you need to do: avoid unnecessary changes. Okay? Make sure that the changes are necessary. Minimize the things that are not related to the core output or the outcome that you want to achieve. And make sure you keep some things familiar. It's called familiar surprise. So avoid meaningless change, avoid unrelated change, and keep some things familiar. Okay, that'll help you get through the discomfort and helps people around you get through the discomfort. The sixth battle, Vernon, is what we call a fear of incompetence. When change affects people's competencies and abilities, it makes them feel inferior. If I tell someone, right, we're switching from doing things on radio only, now we want to do things on Facebook as well. We want to do things on social media. So we want to start using different technology. Some will say, no, maybe that doesn't work. And you'll see it says here, people start to express skepticism about the efficacy of the new, that really is just masking their feelings of inadequacy. That's really what's happening. When people start saying, this can't work, this won't work, it's because they don't want to have to expose themselves to their weaknesses. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's a fear. So, what do you do to remedy this? And you even hear yourself saying this can't work. When you're skeptical about things all the time, is it because it's related to a competency you currently have that you're afraid you may have not upgraded, now will be exposed? So, what do? Get information, education, training, get a mentor, get a support system. That helps you. Okay. Sitting in a support system will help you through that navigation of change, whether it's financial change, career change, anything. You need information, education, training, mentors, and a support system. And also have a period of overlap. Now, I've seen some people do this with the employment to entrepreneurship transition, where they'll mainly start their business over the weekends and slowly start to drift into it. So that by the time they are now ready, they've built some things and they feel more comfortable with this change because they feel that if they went into entrepreneurship, they'd be incompetent and they'll struggle with it. So that transition helps them. So periods of transition and support systems and knowledge and education will help you with the fear of incompetence. Okay, because then you can test it at a small scale, at a slightly small scale. Even startup schools actually say start your business at a small level on a weekend. Okay, just start the idea on a weekend. Don't have to go full scale in it. Start it on a weekend slowly and then figure it out from there. Then you'll be able to get comfortable with the idea of doing it more on a full time basis. The seventh battle, Vernon, is called the fear of added responsibility. The reality, Vernon, is especially at the beginning, change is hard. It's hard to implement because it takes work. You have to learn something. You have to become good at something. It's a new thing. It requires work to do it. This is even change in relationship status. The fear of getting married is there's added responsibilities to getting married. The fear of having a family is there's added responsibilities to this stuff. Okay, so there's new responsibilities you have to take up, and it's hard. And people may start to feel overwhelmed and by the change and start to resist this added responsibility. So, what you
Yeah.
want to do is first acknowledge that there is going to be hard work. Don't lie to yourself. Okay, this is where people actually, no, change is going to be a piece of cake. You are lying. It's hard, okay, because that's something you've never done for a reason. You're not good at it. Allocate exclusive resources to the process. Perhaps maybe you need someone to help guide you through it. Perhaps maybe you need some support. Perhaps you need, if you're trying to get married, maybe work on some actual time on it. Perhaps if you're trying to take up a new skill, Vernon, allocate specific hours of your day towards doing it. That's actually quite important. So, allocation of specific resources, be it time, money, anything, to the actual implementation of change, and recognize and reward your actual participation in it. Okay, recognize your hard work and reward it. Sometimes it's good when you're trying to build a new habit for that. The eighth battle, like I said, these are 10 battles, and it's good if you can pick out which ones you're battling with, and these remedies can help you. Is the fear of unintended consequences. Change does have collateral damage, Vernon. When you're trying to implement a new change, something you didn't think about may have collateral damage. Okay, so you may find that, oh, by trying to prune my finances, now I have to eat differently. Oh, goodness. Now there are changes I have to do here. And I
Mhm.
actually enjoyed my food. So now what happens is that the recipients and the ripple effects of change may resist these unintended consequences they didn't sign up for. So maybe your spouse, maybe there's changes you need to make in your life, and you have a girlfriend or a spouse or something, and now that affects it. You're trying to tighten your belt and you're trying to pay down a debt, and like, hold on, we're not going out for dinners anymore. I didn't sign up for this. You said you wanted to get your finances together, but now we have to start tightening up what's going on. So you can see that you may get some resistance in some areas because now it affects people or others that didn't sign up with it. So my statement to you, Vernon, and to anybody here, sorry, I have been interrupted by a little notification there, is that the first thing you need to do when implementing change is you need to enlarge the circle of stakeholders. So, Vernon, if you want to make a financial change in your life, or if you want to make a business change, ask yourself, how will this affect my money? How will this affect my
Mhm.
health? How will this affect my relationships with friends and families? How will this affect my mental development, my mental health? How will this affect other parts of my life? Because if you don't ask those questions, when this thing starts to cause pain in those areas, resistance will start to come back to this thing. Okay. Then you wonder why I'm not implementing change because you didn't foresee how waking up at 5 in the morning may affect your job. Okay. What if you're sleeping late? So now you have to say, okay, so for me to wake up at 5 in the morning, I need to sleep by 10 in the evening so that I'm not sleepy at work. These are things you have to start doing. Okay? Because you have to start incorporating the other parts of your life. The ninth, the ninth battle, Vernon, and I know that it is Easter, brother. The ninth battle that people are going through is the fear of past traumas. Now, perhaps you've tried this change in the past, okay? Or maybe you tried changing before and it was a traumatic experience and now it's a trigger. So sometimes change opens up old wounds. Historic resentments are remembered and some things that go back even generations. My grandparents, my this, my that. So the question you need to start doing, Vernon, and this one is quite important. This is why you need to heal from your traumas. This is exactly what, because if you don't heal from your traumas, calls to change may act as triggers that will make you resist those changes that are needed in your life. Okay?
Mhm.
So if perhaps let's say there's an emotional expenditure sitting in your budget line, and it's linked to a pain you went through. Maybe this is a coping mechanism. You're spending money on this thing because it's a coping mechanism. Perhaps liquor, for example, is your coping mechanism, and it's helping you get through the trauma of an old relationship that burnt out. But now I'm sitting here telling you as a financial advisor that, look, you have to cut out alcohol, man. It's not helping you. You're going to struggle with it. And there's a wound with now being sober, because now you have to go back and actually deal with the actual issues of your life. Okay, maybe these past relations with hurts. If you don't heal from those things, change becomes a triggering event. Okay. So this actually requires guys, and especially us guys, you actually have to unpack some of the things you've been through, because it's going to make it very difficult for you to actually enact certain changes in your life. If you've gone through an entrepreneurial experience, okay, that went wrong, any change in your work and your business is now going to affect you badly. And you're now going to start becoming triggered every time someone says, let's try a new business, let's try a new business. The last time I did that, it went bankrupt, it was bad. You're going to become so resistant. So unpack your traumas, people. If you have to sit down with a therapist, go and sit down with them. Sit down with a church counselor, do something. But you will always be resistant to change if you do not deal with your past traumas, because anything that resembles them will be an issue. Anybody, Venom, I don't know if you're too young, but have you remembered a song called You Remind Me by Usher? He says, you
Yeah.
remind me of a girl that I once knew, see her face whenever I look at you, who believe all the things she put me through. This is why I just can't get with you. So you see, guy, the whole song is about rejecting a woman on the basis that she looks like somebody you used to date. Okay? That's a serious issue. So imagine you lose out on a whole beautiful relationship because they look like somebody who you haven't dealt with the trauma of in your past. Okay, so deal with the traumas of your past, because they can stop you from embracing the future.
Yeah.
Final battle, and the biggest one is the fear of incoming pain. Change is not pain free, Vernon, and humans are naturally pain averse. Change involves redundancy of things. It requires losing in areas you've gained. I've had to tell people, Vernon, who have bought huge swaths of land, you need to change your portfolio. You're asset rich and cash poor. You're going to have a problem. So I tell people, sell land. Now they get, because maybe they've just collected so much land and there's no cash flow generating asset. And I say, what are you going to retire with? Are you going to take a knife and a fork and eat the land? You're not going
Yeah.
to, unless you're going to farm it, but you're not going to eat that land. And you're not a good farmer either. So what you need to sell some of this so that you can have some cash flow generating asset to supplement this asset. It's not a good asset to hold in retirement. And people get very scared of that. Okay? Because I tell them, where are you
Yeah.
going to get the money to develop this land? What are you going to do? And this is a tough thing. So it involves the redundancy of that asset. Some of them have to make a loss selling that asset. Okay. It involves taking on a cost sometimes, losing an investment sometimes. And it's a painful experience. So loss is a painful experience that has a lot of emotion attached to it. So what do you do when somebody's going to take pain because of a change? One, you must be honest with them. Even with yourself, when you can see, Vernon, you're going to have to go through a change, you're going to have to be honest about the pain you're going to face. Be fast about it as well. Don't hold off and try and, when it comes to painful loss, don't try and do it gradually. Rip the band aid off. Okay? When it comes to pain that you're going to have to go through of losing something, just rip the band aid off and be fair. Okay? That is an important part. So these are the 10 battles of changes. And later on, Rosabeth Moss Cantor actually pulls out 6 principles to positive change in your life. And she says, and I'm just going to go through them straight on face value. Show up. Sometimes that makes the difference. Speak up. The power of a voice is shaping an agenda, framing a situation, and influencing others. So what is spoken about sometimes frames your mind about the change. And that may be the big thing. Look up. You need aspirational principles, visions, and values. What is vision related and value related that gets you through this period of change? Team up. Partners matter. Everything goes together with partners. You need to collaborate with people. Ask for help where you are weak. That helps you implement. Get an advisor, get support. That is the other important thing. Never give up. Cantor's law, she says, is everything can look like a failure in the middle. Okay, it often takes longer than you imagined. Persist and persevere against naysayers and obstacles. And finally, she says, lift others up. When your change also helps elevate others, it inspires you to continue to do it. And it's very positive when you look at it. Finally, Vernon, our quote of the day comes from Rosabeth Moss Cantor, who says, anything can look like a failure in the middle. Push through this, push through this challenging midpoint is the only path to success. And I quickly just want to talk about social change as well. One of the mistakes a lot of us make, and I've seen this in our country, Vernon. A lot of us like whenever we want to change something in Zambia, we always say, "But can it appeal to the common man?" They always say, "The man in such and such compound or such and such." Change does not appeal to everyone at the beginning. It moves through society slowly. It starts with early adopters, sorry, innovators, then early adopters, and sometimes it stops here because this is a niche. But if it is going to become mainstream, it then goes through the early majority, the late majority, and the
Yeah.
laggards. So change takes time. Take a look at the transition we've gone through, Vernon, from manual cars to automatic cars. Except for
Automatic.
these last resistors, these last bastion of fighters who are holding on, over time, we've slowly weaved out of manual cars and slowly drifted into automatic cars because people would like driving not to be a job. Okay, they do it because they have to get from point A to B, and they would like it not to be a job, and they like it to be comfortable. Now, those who want to give themselves work doing it, please, by all means. But the point I'm trying to say is that that sentiment has slowly drifted into society. So that it takes time from mobile money to manual cars to phones.
Oh,
Everything that has changed successfully has changed slowly. So this thing in Zambia, where we say, no, for us to implement this program, how does this affect the man in the Jack
wow.
compound? It won't at the beginning. That's a reality, people. Change does not, it's not useful to people at the beginning. It's sold to a specific group of people slowly and then slowly. But because we have, and I'm sorry to say this, Zambia has NGO mentality where everything is about funding. It's always about the base of the country. We never get change right because we're trying to get it right for everyone from the beginning. And that's where we fail. Okay, it's right for a few people who then inspire the next group of people, who then inspire the next group of people, and the next group of people. And finally, therefore, Vernon, the eventual quote that I want to leave us with today comes from Bill Gates, who says, people who resist change will be confronted by the growing number of people who see the better ways that are available thanks to technology. So slowly, people they were resisting mobile money at the beginning, weren't they? Now today, change, now they've accepted it. And that, Vernon, is our conversation about change. If you want to grow, embrace change. Those 10 battles that you're going to go through, look at yourselves in the areas you want to change. Ask yourself those questions. Why am I resisting change in these areas? Ask yourself those questions. Is
Yes.
it uncomfortable? Is it unknown? What is it that I'm going through that's making me resist the change? And then figure out the simple remedial fashion. She's worked in the change industry for decades. That's how she came up with that. That is 40 years, Vernon, of somebody who has studied change and who has actually managed it at organizational level to help us now get a map on how to do it. So if you're resisting it, those are 10 places to start looking. And with that, my brother, have a happy Good Friday, my man.
Thank you.
Cheers. Have a good day.